watching, what's it called?
You're watching Wisconsin Beer on Channel 36. Brew City Bruisers, beer, beer, beer!
Well, I grew up in Wisconsin, I live here all my days. Surrounded by good people, this is where they work and play. Well, I had myself some good times, but the ones I hold most dear, the ones where I was holding a Wisconsin beer.
Wisconsin beer culture. It's a beautiful thing. Wisconsinites don't just love beer, they embrace it. Beer is in our bones, deep-seated in our heritage. In the modern era, perhaps there's no bigger beer celebration in Wisconsin than opening day for the Milwaukee Brewers. Resembling more circus than baseball game, opening day is filled with good food, good drink, and colorful characters that represent Wisconsin's modern beer culture. So Wisconsin Beer sent two of our own colorful characters to MC the event.
Hello, I'm David Kay.
And I'm Tanner Burke. And we're here at Miller Park for opening day, one of the key events for enjoying a Wisconsin beverage. It's a chilly 28 degrees here today, but that's not stopping any of these people from enjoying a nice, cold Wisconsin beverage.
And no, it isn't, Tanner. One of the main holidays here in Wisconsin. Opening day for the Brewers, opening day for the Packers, and hunting season. Let's go talk to them about some nice Wisconsin beer.
We might as well, David. Cheers. Man, this could be a good day.
All right, so what are you here for?
I'm here to watch the Brewers win opening day.
And Bruce Wayne, I see you have a Wisconsin beer in your hand. Any specific reason, aside from the fact that I handed it to you?
This is the finest brew in all the land.
That's all I needed to hear. This cupcake is a coffee stout, New Glarus cupcake. Let's just give it a shot here. It's probably the best thing I've ever tasted. It's fantastic.
How many dates have you agreed to go on because you had one too many beers?
17.
17. Thank you.
I'm joined here with a couple people who just happen to be half man, half horse. That's kind of a surprise. I've never seen anything like this. Can you tell me how something like that's possible?
Well, genetically, I'm not exactly sure how it all works with the X's and Y's, but I know that I've been drinking beer since I was a child, and I seem to have grown into this quite well.
If you had to pick, what is your favorite beer from the state of Wisconsin?
That's not fair.
Man, all right, what is this that you're drinking today?
This is Port Huron Oatmeal Stout.
All right, and can you tell us a little bit about that beer? It's not one I'm familiar with.
Well, it's fairly new. It's only been a seasonal brew, I guess, from Port Huron, which is in Wisconsin Dells. 3 months old, I guess. The brewery itself is only about a year old, but the guy makes some fabulous stuff, and just delicious.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Capital Brewery and what kind of stuff you do?
Yes, Capital Brewing was formed in 1986. We've been in business now for about 27 years. We are a brewery that's noted for our lagers and our Doppelbocks, but we're here at County Stadium today promoting something that we haven't had in the 27 years, and that's an IPA, which is the fastest growing style of beer now in the craft industry.
Oh, fantastic. Are there any other new beers on the horizon for Capital Brewery? Any new barriers you want to break down?
We do have for our summer season. We're going to do something different this year. It's a traditional beer we've made for many years called Lake House, but it's a beer we brewed for years called Bavarian Lager, which kind of is true to our roots as a Wisconsin brewery. It's a German-style beer, a little lighter golden color flavor, so people will be, I think, excited to see the old beer come back.
It means you can only have 4 ingredients in beer. If you can name all 4 mandatory ingredients, I will give you a free beer right now.
Yeast, barley, hops.
Water, hops, barley, and yeast.
We have a winner!
Everyone knows the German purity law includes 4 ingredients and 4 ingredients only. Beer, aside from beer, Water, yeast, barley, and hops. Those German purity laws are signified by this word.
Reinheitsgebot.
Reinheitsgebot.
Reinhesterbat.
Reinheitsgebot.
Reinheitsgebot. Reinheitsgebot. Roll out the barrel. We'll have a barrel of fun. Roll out the barrel. We got the blues on the run. Sing boom torero. Sing out a song of good cheer. Get out of the top of the barrel for the kings are here.
Over the years, I've probably consumed, well, quite a bit of Wisconsin beer. And I'm so glad to say that Sud City is still my favorite. Spotted Cow. Crusher turned me out of this a number of years ago. Folks, you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MP TV.
Just what makes Wisconsin so unique to the brewing industry? We found out.
Oh, Wisconsin has to be right on the top of having some of the most interesting brewery history of any state in the nation, including Missouri, which has Anheuser-Busch.
So early on, for a lot of the Germans especially, there were lots of beer gardens in Milwaukee. You know, some run by breweries, you know, some run by just private operators. And a lot of those families would go to church on Sunday morning and spend the afternoon in a beer garden.
The German immigrants that came into Milwaukee and throughout much of Wisconsin, and Germans are still the predominant ethnic group in the state. They brought with them a tremendous taste for beer, for good lager beer. And they brought with them their brewmasters as well. So we've got a market in the people that are here. We've got the skills in the brewmasters that are able to do it. And now we've got a climate that is very conducive to the production of beer. What do I mean by that? We have the availability of good water, ice in the wintertime. Ice was necessary. Cooling is still necessary for the lagering process, allowing beer to cool. And we had hops. Sauk County in Wisconsin in the late 1800s was the leading producer of hops in the nation. It represented a time when, and most people have the wrong idea of the beer garden. The beer garden was a social, a place where German, especially German families, but others too, could get together on a weekend and listen to Oompa music, good old German polka music, eat bratwurst and other German sausages, and drink German beer. It was a social event, an opportunity for families to get together and have a very good time.
I'm a Roman Catholic. You go to Mass, and after Mass, your family would have Bloody Marys and beers, and watch polka.
And kids were very much not just welcome, but encouraged there. So it was a real part of the social cement of Milwaukee's German community.
Hello, I'm Dan Davies, the star of the movie Ed Gein the Musical and the upcoming Western West of Thunder. And you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MP TV.
And what about the most successful of the beer barons, the company that outlasted them all?
Miller begins back in 1855 when Frederick Miller, who came with both yeast and money from Germany, as a brewer there, he bought what was essentially a bankrupt brewery founded by members of the Best family, who also founded the Pabst Brewery. So there's some really interesting ties among Milwaukee's brewing families. And he was pretty much a local and then a regional brewer until after 1900. Miller High Life comes in 1903, and that's the first kind of move up into a larger platform. They were purchased by Philip Morris back in 1969, and these guys were master marketers. And they moved Miller, I think, from 7th place to 2nd place in the country in a matter of 4 or 5 years. You know, it was just like a rocket ship, and it was all light beer.
Leinenkugel now is a part of Miller. I really liked Leinenkugel in Chippewa Falls, and I had a chance to visit old Jake Leinenkugel. He would be the grandfather of the present generation that's operating Leinenkugel. And I asked old Jake Leinenkugel one time, really a curmudgeon of an old guy, and he's sitting behind his desk. And I said, "What do you think about the light beers?" He looked at me and he said, "Do you mean Bud Light?" And I said, "Well, yeah." "Well," he said, "they're malt water. Not worth wasting your time drinking."
My name is George Bluefus. I'm the brewmaster for the 3 Water Street Brewery locations, and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
But what a lot of people don't realize is that Miller Coors, the Miller Valley Brewery there, does contract brewing for, I'm not sure how many, perhaps dozens of different brands. And among them are their old rivals like Pabst and Schlitz, as well as Old Style and Hamm's, and if you go into the packaging line there, you'll just see just this procession of it's kind of a museum of America's famous brands.
So Miller came up with the idea of having a bottle that was clear, not a dark, heavy-looking bottle, to give you a sense of masculinity. They lightened it up, and then they called their beer the champagne of bottled beer. And so now it's okay for women to drink beer. And another thing happened that Miller and the others caught on to. Once beer began to be bottled, was that it was okay, in fact encouraged, to drink beer in the homes. Because for years, the only beer available was in the saloon someplace, and they were god-awful places. I mean, who would want to go to one of these smelly old saloons where there's the tobacco-chewing, dill pickle-eating, pickled egg-chewing German beer drinkers? They didn't want to do that. So now we're spreading out and coming up with different kinds of beers for different tastes.
I'm Batman, and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
Boom.
We went from corporate dominance to an explosion of craft and home brews. What happened?
When Jimmy Carter was president of the United States, for whatever reason, I don't know, he's from the South and you wouldn't think this of Jimmy Carter, but he signed legislation that made it legal for individuals to brew beer at home. And that single event, if you want to come back to something that's pivotal in the future of something, that law opened up the doors for all kinds of people to try brewing. I have in my Breweries of Wisconsin book a number of recipes for home brewing beer, which is now perfectly legal. And that opened up the doors for the microbreweries, pub breweries, brewing for your neighbor, whatever you want to occur. Sprecher in Milwaukee and Capitol in Madison were a couple of the early ones to develop microbreweries.
One of the greatest things about homebrewing, and what I think makes it a really nice hobby, is that you're doing it because you love beer, and there may be certain aspects of beer you like, certain flavors, and you can really start to hone in on those by making it yourself. A lot of people can be intimidated by the brewing process. It sounds sometimes involved, and there's a lot of equipment, and there's time. But in all honesty, if you can make macaroni and cheese, you can do this. It just takes a little bit of patience. Here at Northern Brewer, we do offer classes for anyone that is interested. We also have a DVD that we will readily hand you so that you can watch how to do it. There's plenty of things out on YouTube. You should find our channel. It's youtube.com/northernbrewer. So our starter kits include things like a carboy, which is simply a container or something to ferment in. After fermentation occurs, which is about 7 to 10 days, you can rack or transfer into a secondary vessel just to let it age out a little bit and clarify. And then you would bring that beer into a bottling bucket, which is it's a bucket with a spigot on it and a valve so that you can easily fill bottles like this. Once you have your bottle filled, There's a simple tool that will help cap those bottles as well, and you simply crimp on a cap to the top of that. After capping, you're waiting about 2 weeks, and then you'll chill them down in the fridge and pop one open and have a wonderful evening.
I'm Joe Ruthie, and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
I think anything that does that kind of blends art with leisure, there's a lot of power there, and anything that evokes Milwaukee's brewing heritage, I think is not just smart business, but I think tends to make place. Tends to reinforce the role Milwaukee's had in the brewing industry, and I think that's all to the good.
In Wisconsin, beer is more than just a drink. It's a social event. All the way from bars and taverns to Milwaukee's own roller derby team, the Brew City Bruisers. Beer has become a way of life, an excuse to gather, and a badge of pride. We sat down with some of the skaters and refs from this roller derby league to ask them about the connection between the sport and beer.
Well, a lot of where the name came from was that the girls who are drawn toward derby are often people who can, I believe it's been said, we drink like it's our job. And also, Brew City Bruisers, I mean, that sounds so damn cool. So
we're here to live it up. I know that my friends all take care of each other and make sure that everyone gets home safe, and that's the most important thing. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying a nice brew.
We love everyone's accepted. It's girls of all sizes, and it's a really great community.
I'm Scooter from the Brew City Bruisers, and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
Milwaukee itself has been built by just amazing people, and they're usually some of the harder beer drinking people, but I always tell people when I travel, because inevitably I'll have to tell them, because I'm proud of being a Wisconsinite, they'll say, oh, you must drink a lot of beer. I go, well, I do. And then they kind of will poo-poo it a little bit. And I always look at them and go, Wisconsin has the highest SAT and ACT scores in the nation. We're usually number one. Minnesota sometimes is up there, and Iowa sometimes is up there. I said, there's got to be a connection. We drink the most beer, plus we're the smartest. It's like living in the Bordeaux region or the Chateau region. You're going to drink red wine. It's the best red wine in the world. If you live where at least the best in North America is right here in Wisconsin, and we rival a lot of times German beers. Sprecher is just as good as many German beers. So beer is like that social lubricant as well. It just, it should be not in vino veritas, in wine there is truth, it should be in beer there is truth. So for me, it's like you have to enjoy it. It's like living, in France, in the Bordeaux region or Chateau region, and not enjoying a wine. It's sacrilegious, people.
A dark time for beer makers and beer lovers across the country.
You have a group of Yankees who are largely people of British stock born east of Chicago, and they tended to be the teetotalers, the temperance types, and it was never temperance. It was always prohibition. They didn't say, drink moderately. They said we wanted to cut it off.
Beer was thought to be exempt from all of this because it was seen more as a food, and whiskey was the devil's brew. The brewing industry did not think it would be included. They were deluded into thinking that people would, especially the Germans, would never, and the Catholics and the Poles would never, ever allow a legislation to prohibit the drinking of beer. Drunkenness was a terrific problem, and men would use up their salaries wherever they were working, and the families were often destitute. And the women said, we're going to have any more, this is it. We're going to put our foot down and keep our men sober.
And there were periodic attempts to curb access to alcohol that were successful, and one of them created pretty much a riot in Milwaukee, a measure that held bartenders responsible for the behavior of their patrons.
Now, the temperance movement had a strong connection to women. The Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU, was a terribly strong, very strong movement, starting in the East, coming out into the West. And you get a bunch of women marching, carrying signs, back in front of the saloons. Even when I was a kid, long after Prohibition was over, it went off in '33, the WCTU people in Little Wild Rose, Wisconsin, my hometown, they were still marching back in front of the saloons on Saturday night. I mean, they had a zeal to put these saloons out of business. And then when Prohibition hit, I mean, everything went just sour south. It was an economic blow. There were a lot of people employed in the brewing industry in states like Wisconsin, hundreds, thousands of people.
They could not sell their main product. So Milwaukee's brewers, like brewers elsewhere, they had to scramble, they had to improvise, they had to find something else to do. And the result was just some bizarre choices in terms of product line.
Pabst bought farms out toward Oconomowoc, and they ran dairy farms. He had a huge dairy farm. And some of them made near beer, which meant it could not have more than 0.5% alcohol.
The strangest one was the Eline family, who owned Schlitz, made chocolate bars called the E-Line chocolate bar, in a brand new plant that was so far out in the country that they had to extend streetcar service, and they lost their shirts on it. No, this was not a moneymaker, but at least an attempt. No.
It is a strange law, and I've described it in my book, the Prohibition law, because it would allow the selling of malt, but you couldn't buy beer. But people could buy malt, so make their own beer, and so a lot of that was happening.
Hi, I'm Jeremy King with Northern Brewer, and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
Story. I grew up on a farm in Waushara County in central Wisconsin. And then when I was doing this book, I would get all these Prohibition stories. And did you have any beer? Oh, yeah, we always had beer. What kind of beer did you have? Asked a neighbor one time, and he said, well, we made potato beer. Potato beer. You can make beer out of most anything, to tell you the truth, as you probably know. So potato beer. Well, this guy said, you want to try some? Well, my dad and the neighbor, we were visiting another neighbor, visiting this guy with the potato beer, and he said, I'll bring some up from the cellar. And he brought up a bottle of this potato beer, and he handed it to my dad, and my dad opened it up, and the beer just shot right out of the bottle. He said, you can't drink it that way. You can't just open the bottle, and you open it and you quick put it in your mouth. And so this other guy said, well, I will try it. So he handed him a bottle of this potato beer, snapped open the cover, put it in his mouth. 2 streams of potato beer came out of his nose. The poor guy's head was about blown off. I mean, it was powerful stuff. This homemade beer in those days during Prohibition, I mean, it was something. The ramifications of it, this is Al Capone time, and this is the revenuers' time, and this is when the whiskey is coming in from Canada. I mean, Wisconsin is right in the middle of all of this stuff. Al Capone had a strong presence in Wisconsin. People thought the world of him. He left a lot of money in this state. He bought a lot of illicit liquor from this state.
Hey everybody, we're the Tossers and you're watching Wisconsin Beer on MPTV.
Cheers!
What does the future have in store for brewing in Wisconsin?
The development of Wisconsin's brewing industry is just at the beginning of something that's going to be very important. And to bring an analogy with the cheesemaking industry, they are working hand in hand, not so much cooperatively, but if you watch the parallel development of the craft, that's C-R-A-F-T, cheese industry, and the craft brewing industry, they are developing unique brews. Cheese is the same way, unique cheeses. We have 300-400 different kinds of cheeses now in Wisconsin, and I see that as a wonderful criticism of homogenization. There was for a while the idea that if you bought a beer in Milwaukee, it should be the same beer that you can buy in Seattle or in New Orleans or wherever it is, and if you buy a hotel room in Milwaukee, it should be the same hotel room. So we all this chain stuff developing, and now there's people have stood up and said that may be fine and dandy, but we have and will appreciate a unique product, something that has a sense of place to it, something that has a taste that is not like what's in Seattle. But generally speaking, each locality has a beer that's special, and we are seeing that in this state big time, and that's going to continue. And I applaud that. That's wonderful.
I grew up in Wisconsin, I lived here all my days. Surrounded by good people, this is where they work and play. Well, I had myself some good times, and the ones I hold most dear were the ones where I was holding the Wisconsin beer. With my family and my friends, the good time never ends, as long as my drink is near at hand. I grew up in Wisconsin, it's where my heart belongs. With Brewers fans across the land, I'll lift my voice in song. Now raise your glass until it's gone, raise your glass and give it cheer. Raise your glass one last time for Wisconsin beer.
I'm Bloody Cupcake with Brew City Bruisers. Stay tuned for Wisconsin Beer, Part 2 on MPTV.